was operating on my own, and I invited a young fellow named Ed Summer to see an early cut of a film called Pumping Iron. And I was sitting with Ed looking at this rough cut of Pumping Iron and couldn't help but notice Arnold Schwarzenegger as an amazing personality. And I said there must be something that would be right for him as a movie vehicle. And Ed immediately turned and said, well, Conan, of course. So he took me to his comic book store and showed me the world of Frank Frazetta and the world of Conan, which at that point I was not familiar with. And that started me on a journey, first to get the rights, and at the same time meeting Arnold, and together we spent close to 5 years trying to get the film set up.
When Ed Pressman came to me with the project, I have barely even heard of Conan, because we in Europe were much more familiar with other kind of comic book characters. But then when he sent me the comic books and when he showed me all Robert E. Howard's work and Frank Frazetta's paintings and drawings and his interpretation of the look of Conan, I was fascinated by that and fell in love with the project and with the idea. But then, of course, it was then a long road from 1977 to the time we actually rolled the camera.
The first script was written by Ed Summer and by Roy Thomas, who was one of the writers at Marvel Comics. They wrote a very interesting and compelling story that could have been the basis of the movie. And ultimately, what got the project really moving was Oliver's script. I had met Oliver Stone through his agent, Ron Mardikian at William Morris, and he showed me the script for Platoon, which was a remarkable script, and it was evident that he had the talent, and he also had the interest of creating the first Conan movie.
The draft I wrote, Conan, the first one, I always undertook it as one of 12. I always thought there'd be like 12 movies, but unfortunately, I feel the producers of the movie misunderstood the real goal, and that they sold it short. And Arnold should have come back every year or 2 years like James Bond and done one.
Oliver's script was like Dante's Inferno. It was hell on earth, and it was a remarkable conception of what the Conan movie could be.
I had a lot of mutants, a lot of animals. I was into DNA cloning, all that stuff a long time ago. It made sense, right? I never was able to realize it on film, that vision. I saw armies of 40, 50,000 mutants coming at each other,
Oliver always wanted to direct, so we, at one point, had the idea that Oliver would co-direct with a special effects expert named Joe Alves, who had done Jaws. We spent a lot of time talking with different directors. We talked to Alan Parker. We spent a lot of time with Ridley Scott. And I remember being in London, and I think Ridley, or one of the directors we hoped would do it, turned us down, and we were sitting there totally dismayed, not knowing what to do next.
We went back to our hotel room that night, and we said, look, Dino De Laurentiis is in London. He's pursuing the rights. He's here at the hotel next door. I get the picture, let's sell out to him now, tonight, and let's have done with it because it's broken our hearts.
Said the pressman one day came to see me with the script. He said, I want to sell this script. What is about? He said, from famous cartoon Conan the Barbarian. I read the script, was a little too violent, but was a great script. Really great script. And then I deal with Ted Pressman, and I buy the script. I buy out. And I offer the pitch to, at that time, at Universal, to Ned Tannant. He was in charge of production. He loved the script. It was too violent, we needed to do some rewriting. And I said to Ned, Ned, before we do rewriting, I want to choose a director first. We chose John Milius, because he was a good writer, nice director. We did the rewriting with him, and he directed the movie.
I knew nothing of Conan the Barbarian, or Robert E. Howard, or any of the books, or the comic books, or anything, until Oliver Stone came and told me about it. The one thing I knew about that I was aware of was Frank Frazetta's paintings. And of course, I love Viking things, and I always wanted to do a Viking movie. And when I was a surfer, one of my first names was Viking Man because I had this great big sword. Oliver had already written the script, and I read it and it was really inspirational, probably because it was so insane. And then I saw that I could do a movie that I really wanted to do. I did want to bring this back to a certain historical grounding, and I tried to make everything happen in a history as if it really did happen. In fact, all of the stories of Conan, Howard could have written them all and had all of this in the Dark Ages in a real historical period.
Robert Howard, who's a strange bird from Texas, wrote these great stories, most originating in pulp, I believe. He had a great gift for this perverse mythos of darkness and death and raging and mad Wagnerian mentality.
He was convinced that, that the town wanted to exterminate him and this kind of thing, and he'd go home and board up his windows and load rifles. I mean, complete nut.
The original storyline that we were developing, we at the same time brought in a number of artists to try to create the world for ourselves, but also to present what the film would look like to prospective studios. It was such a visual idea in the first place that we needed to project that, and we had a whole tremendous presentation, which Ron Cobb was a very central part of, along with a number of other artists.
I started sitting in on some meetings and did some tentative original artwork, kind of starting to visualize the first version of the script, which was very much in the fantasy vein of the Robert Howard novels. With John's massive rewrite, the picture became very action-oriented and less magical, less fantasy, more like an ancient world picture.
Everything has a reflection of something that did exist. Nothing is just designed to be fantasy. It has to look like it would really work. Every single cart, every single weapon, everything has to be something that has a practicality and that will work.
I was eager to design it. I wanted to be involved in making sure it was just had the right feel. So I just hogged that job entirely and drew up both of the Atlantean sword and Conan's original sword, and supervised the making of them, and in as much as the opening sequence, which I actually directed.
On the sword that his father makes in the beginning, it has the great elk antlers and the hooves on the back and all this kind of thing. And then on the blade it says, "Suffer no guilt, ye who wield this in the name of Crom."
I love the idea of inventing an architectural style that you couldn't quite identify. That was one of the things I wanted to do. You know, kind of design the snake cult so that all the artifacts all look like they fit together, sort of like corporate logos and things, you know. The symbolism in the picture was actually very important. John saw it that way, and I did as well. So we put a lot of time into making sure that they would resonate on the screen, and you'd remember them and fear them or get their significance. You know.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of your women. That is good.
From the beginning, it was always the idea of putting Arnold, you know. I mean, we thought of other people, and none of it really worked. Arnold was already a household word. He was a major celebrity.